The drone of cicadas that year was a fever pitch, louder than any summer before. Outside the classroom, the branches of the trees reached out, a wild and desperate tangle against the glass. But nothing could block the scorching, relentless sun. The top floor of Mingli Block was always a chaotic symphony of noise between classes. The study rep of Year 2, Class A, drifted into the classroom like a wisp of smoke, his voice a conspiratorial hiss. "I have news. We're getting a new student." The little eunuch from the respectability room is here to grace us with his gossip again. "You're the eunuch," he shot back. "I'm serious this time. It's not even the midterms. What kind of student shows up now?" "A transfer student," he said, letting the words hang in the thick, humid air. With that, the few who were actually awake stirred, a current of electricity passing through the room. "Boy or girl? Are you sure?" a girl asked. "Absolutely," he said, letting the word hang in the thick, humid air. The study rep seemed to savor the memory for a moment before adding, "Who knows which teacher was cruel enough to go and pluck the school prince from another campus just for us?" A wave of jeers and whistles echoed through the classroom. But amidst the chaos, a few girls couldn't help themselves. Their gazes stole toward the corner of the very last row. There he was, a boy, lost to the world, head pillowed on his desk as he slept. A single hand rested on the back of his head, the long, elegant digits slightly curved, a soft intake of breath. The sharp line of his wrist bone jutted out, a stark, beautiful detail. The noise was becoming too much. He ran his fingers through his short, dark hair, a restless motion, and shifted, turning his head away from the light. The girls quickly looked away, their voices instantly dropping to hushed murmurs. Where did he transfer from? The study rep named a school they'd never heard of. "What's that? Is there even a school like that around here?" "Never heard of it, but he must be from a top-tier school. Otherwise, how could he possibly get into our class?" "Wait," a boy whispered. "Let me check." He moved like a thief, sliding his phone out from under his desk. "No teachers around, right? Watch my back." He typed quickly, his eyes scanning the screen. A moment later, he just froze. "Fuck! What is it?" The boy turned his phone around for the others to see. A stunned silence fell over the small group. It took a long moment for anyone to process what they were seeing. "He's not even from this province," someone finally breathed out. "He finished his first year somewhere else and transferred into Jiangsu? Is this handsome guy out of his mind?" Meanwhile, Sang Wang, the handsome guy whose head was allegedly stuck between doors, was waiting for his orders in the student affairs office. The cicada screamed from the heavy shade of the trees. He had to press his earpiece in tighter, turning away from the windows just to hear the new voice messages from his father. 3 messages, each one a full minute long. Classic Sheng Mingying. "Your Uncle Xiao Qin just called me. He said you went upstairs by yourself. Why didn't you wait for him? It's a new place, new people. You should have someone guide you. How was the school? Is it that different from First High? They're both top schools, but it's a completely different province. Have you met with old Sue yet?" The air conditioner in the office was ancient, rattling as it focused a narrow stream of cold air into the room. Sang Wang stood directly in its path, letting the chill wash over him. It was a welcome caress, teasing the sweat-dampened tips of his hair until they felt ice cold against his hot skin. His fingers tapped across the screen of his phone, bored and dismissive. He'd cut off each message after only a few seconds, rolling his eyes with every new notification. By the third one, he was already lost in a haze of irritation. He knew, of course, who Uncle Xiao Qin was, the driver who dropped him off, a man he had no intention of waiting for.
The teaching buildings were a fortress, allowing no cars to enter. The parking lot was a world away, and Sheng Wang, feeling the heavy air press down on him, decided the extra effort was a complete waste of energy. He might as well send the driver back first. Then, "And who," he folded his collar down with a light touch, "is old Sue?" "You cut off my voice message again?" Sheng Mingyang's reply was immediate. Sheng Wang used the collar of his shirt to fan his neck, feigning a bad connection as he let the silence stretch. A moment later, his phone rang, his father's voice chasing after him, laced with a familiar grudge. Old Sue is the head of the office, not very tall, looks proper, maybe a little strict. He should have been the one to meet you. Have you seen him yet? Sheng Wang let his mind drift back, picturing the man who had guided him here. I don't think so. The teacher who brought me up was amiable, all smiles. Looked a bit like a big-mouth monkey, actually. He was short, too. His gaze only reached Sheng Wang's shoulders, forcing him to tilt his head up to speak. After depositing Sheng Wang in the office, he'd vanished downstairs, muttering something about getting help with new teaching materials. His father's brain seemed to short-circuit for a second, resigned. Oh, that's probably him. Sheng Wang's lips curved into a slow, wicked smile. Dad, do you think I look proper? Sheng Mingyang sounded like he wanted to reach through the phone and smack him. The man could charm ghosts and humans alike in his business dealings, but with his own son, that polished perfection always seemed to fail. The sound of footsteps approached the door. Sheng Wang turned his head, his eyes catching the movement. Monkey? No, Dean Su is here. I'm hanging up now. His father's words came out in a rush. Right. Behave yourself, make a good first impression on your teachers, and for God's sake, don't give them nicknames. Okay, Sheng Wang hummed in response. I'll have Xiao Chen pick you up tonight. I should be home around the same time. I'll show you. His father's voice shifted, trying for a casual air that didn't quite land. Let's invite Auntie Zhang for a meal. You know, that thing we discussed before. All right? A sharp, cold silence. Sheng Wang's lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Auntie Zhang. Her name was Zhang O, and she had a son. He'd never even met the woman, had only afforded her photos a passing, careless glance. Yet her name had been a persistent whisper in his life for almost a year now, the frequency growing from once every few months to an almost daily presence. He had to admit his father was a master at controlling the atmosphere, so flawless in his execution that Sheng Wang couldn't find a single crack in his composure to let his own anger out. I'll be busier, his father had said last month. Her house has some issues, he had claimed. She can move in, have a place to stay, and take care of you. Taking care of me was a lie. There was already a woman hired for the cooking and cleaning. The housing issue was probably a lie too, just a way to get a foot in the door. Because once she was living there, would she ever really leave? It was all presented as a discussion, but the truth was, before Sheng Wang had even given an answer, new things had already begun to appear in his house, preparations to welcome her and her son. Whether he showed up for dinner tonight or not, the outcome was already written. The silence from his end of the line stretched on. Sheng Mingyang called his name, a question in his voice. Just then, Dean Su, the big-mouth monkey himself, walked through the door. A cool, decisive click. After a brief pause, Sheng Wang ended the call. Dean Su, wanting to maintain a benevolent front for the new arrival, smiled warmly. On the phone with family? That's fine. No need to hang up so quickly. It's important to let them know you've arrived safely. Sheng Wang turned, the coldness in his eyes instantly melting away, replaced by a disarmingly youthful smile. Thank you, teacher. I was just finishing up anyway. Dean Su nodded, pointing to the teacher behind him. He had said it himself, just moments ago. This transfer student might have the kind of looks that spelled trouble, but he seemed like a good kid, one who knew his boundaries. Here, have a seat. The dean pointed to a fresh stack of books. These are the teaching materials we will theoretically be using this semester. You can take a look, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Theoretically? He thought. For a moment, Sheng Wang didn't quite grasp the meaning behind the dean's words. He let his fingers trail over the fresh chemistry book at the top of the pile, opening it and flipping through a few pages with the practiced ease. The content was familiar, mirroring what he'd learned before. Not much of a difference. This won't be a challenge. I've read through your file, Dean Shu began, his tone casual. You've transferred quite a few times, haven't you? Sheng Wang gave a slight nod, his expression unreadable. Few times. He simply went wherever Shang Mingyang's business took him, elementary school in Jiangsu, followed by 2 more transfers between middle school and his first year of high school. This was now the 3rd. Thanks to the constant moving, no place held any special meaning. He was never anywhere long enough for it to matter. I've also seen your results, the dean continued, his voice containing a note of admiration. You're a brilliant student, almost never outside the top 3 of your year in any exam. The quality is certainly there. It's just the academic progress between schools can sometimes have a tiny difference. Dean Shu held up his fingers, demonstrating a gap of less than a centimeter. He offered a comforting smile. You'll always run into little problems like this when you transfer. With a bit of effort, you'll catch up in no time. Nothing to be afraid of. An internal amusement. Fear had never been a factor in Sheng Wang's academic journey, but he knew the part he had to play. He couldn't appear anything less than humble, so he mentally tucked away the arrogant tail that wanted to flick in defiance. I did some mental preparation before coming. I'll do my best to catch up. The dean's benevolent expression deepened. Did your previous school have subject streaming in the first year? No. My school experimented with fluid classes for a semester. Oh, Dean Shu nodded, intrigued. We have fluid classes as well. Ours are just a little more special. Sheng Wang's interest was piqued. Special? How so? The Class A you're about to enter is the best science class in year 2. We reshuffle things every half term. After the midterms and end terms, the bottom 3 students are moved to Class B, and the top 3 from Class B take their place. That is our version of a streamed class. Sheng Wang's expression didn't change, but his mind processed the information with cold clarity. So, while other schools offer freedom of choice, this school's idea of fluidity is the freedom to get screwed over. Having sufficiently intimidated the new student, Dean Shu finally switched back to a more humane demeanor, leading Shang Wang through the flower-lined corridors toward Mingli Block. As they passed the Wall of Honor, Shang Wang couldn't help but stare. The wall, covered with rows of expressionless ID photos, looked disturbingly similar to a collection of wanted posters. This school certainly has a unique taste. Dean Shu, however, seemed to puff up like a peacock, preening on the spot. We don't have a lot of Olympiads in the first year, but our performance is still pretty decent. Most of the faces on this wall will be your classmates. You can get familiar with them in advance. Shang Wang was terrible with faces and had absolutely no interest in meeting his classmates this way. And yet, one face snagged his attention. First, because the photo was repeated so many times, it turned the wall into a one-man puzzle game. Second, because his surname was Zhang, full name Zhang Tian. And that was the part that truly mattered. Shang Wang freely admitted he had the temperament of a petty, tyrannical emperor. He was a firm believer in guilt by association. Call it petty. But recently, he held no pleasant feelings for anyone with the surname Zhang. Dean Shu, admiring the wall for the 1,000th time, suddenly scowled. He leaned in close to Zhang Tian's picture, wiping at it with his finger, suddenly indignant. Who doodled hearts on the Wall of Honor? How dare they?
I had some mental preparation before coming. I'll do my best to catch up. Jiang Wang grunted softly, his voice a low murmur designed to add fuel to the fire. And it's not just one person. Despite the school photographer's unorthodox methods, the boy in the picture possessed a certain air. In the dean's words, he was the type to spell trouble for girls. But Shang Wang saw something else. A cool guy like that, he had a high chance of being a bee king, the kind of person who tries to look cool in everything he does, as if a spotlight follows him everywhere.
A silent, fervent prayer. He prayed that fate would keep him far away from this person, to avoid the inevitable day he'd finally snap and have to fight him. And yet, not 5 minutes after the wish was made, the universe delivered its cruel punchline. He was forcibly placed right beside the living, breathing Bee King himself. The reason given was that, as a new student, he would need help. The best solution? To have the best student as his deskmate, ready to answer any question. When you look at the entire batch, a booming, authoritative voice, Dean Su declared, "You probably can't find a better deskmate than Jane Tiang." The moment the words left his mouth, more than 40 pairs of eyes locked on to Xing Wang, their collective gaze a heavy, suffocating weight. Xing Wang shot a dull, venomous look at the dean, a cold, deadpan thought. Screw you. Chapter 002. A blow. "Teacher, someone's looking for you." A girl's voice cut through the tension, pointing out the window. The hand pressing down on Xing Wang's shoulder finally lifted. Dean Su nodded to the person outside. "The meeting, right? Coming." He straightened up, his gaze falling on the white earpiece still dangling from Xing Wang's ear. "Oh, and one more thing. Today is an exception. From tomorrow on, things like mobile phones and PSPs are not to appear in my classroom. If I catch you," a low, threatening growl. "Hey!" His finger jabbed twice for emphasis before he suddenly lunged, his hand rummaging through the desk of the guy in front with lightning speed. "What the The guy, Gao Tiang, sprang up as if he'd been electrocuted, clutching his school bag to his chest. "You think hiding it is any use? This is the second time, Gao Tiang." Dean Su held up the newly confiscated phone like a trophy. He turned to Xing Wang. "See this? A prime example of what not to do. And where's the discipline rep?" A girl in the front row raised her hand. "Here." "Using a phone, deduct 3 civility points. Swearing, deduct 1. "Okay." His major transaction complete, Dean Su walked away with his spoils, a satisfied smirk on his face. Xing Wang watched the entire dramatic seizure from mere inches away, his expression a little lost in the sheer theatricality of it all. The guy named Gao Tiang turned to look at him, his gaze slowly turning bitter and resentful. After a few seconds, it clicked. Xing Wang quietly, smoothly, removed his own earpiece and tucked it deep into his bag along with his phone, a silent offering to appease the aggrieved student. Gao Tiang was still staring. Xing Wang considered him for a moment, then offered a piece of polite, simple advice. A dry, almost bored tone. "Accept fate." Fuck! Gao Tiang's tense expression broke, a strangled laugh escaping him as he wiped a hand over his face. "It's fine. Not the first time. They do phone checks randomly anyway. No one ever escapes." "Oh." Xing Wang nodded slowly, a genuinely puzzled tone. "Then why were you looking at me like that?" "Just curious," Gao Tiang admitted.
Xing Wang raised an eyebrow. An inquisitive silence. Question mark? We were just talking about you before you came in. I even Baidu'd your old school. So why did you lose your will to live at such a young age and transfer to Sissy Yang? Xing Wang let out a soft, hollow laugh, devoid of any real humor. An enigmatic, dismissive tone. Go ask my dad. Dao Tiang rubbed his buzz cut, ready to dig for more gossip, but the sharp ring of the school bell cut him off. Instantly, the entire classroom transformed. Slouching students sat up straight. Those who had been sleeping raised their heads, stretching their necks and arms, before pulling stacks of test papers from their desks. As everyone returned to their own seats, Xing Wang's situation became glaringly, painfully obvious. He stood out like a sore thumb because every single student in this class sat in single seats. Only him. Only he was tethered to someone else, his desk pushed flush against another's, against a deskmate who was still sleeping like the dead. Fucking Xing Wang, who had just pulled out his new books, froze. He clutched his bag, suddenly unsure what to do with himself or his things. Drowning in a wave of extreme awkwardness, he could only turn his head and glare at the source of his misery. Jane T. The suspected B-King must have been out all night because the bell hadn't even registered. His arm was propped up, covering half of his face, revealing only the sharp, clean line of his jaw. The thin white cotton of his t-shirt stretched across his back, showing the subtle curvature of his shoulders rising and falling with the soft, steady rhythm of his breathing. An exasperated internal sigh. Is he going to sleep until school ends? Just then, Gao Tiang, sitting in front, turned around, as if suddenly remembered something. He reached out his hand and nudged Jing Ti's arm. A hushed, urgent whisper. Hey, Tianger, wake up. It's self-study. He glanced at Xing Wang, offering a quick explanation. He told me to wake him up when class starts so he doesn't oversleep. After 2 more attempts from Gao Tiang, Jing Ti finally began to stir.
He let out a low grunt in response, the sound rough with sleep. The long fingers covering the back of his head curled and uncurled, a slow, restless motion that allowed short black strands of hair to poke through the gaps. His thumb pressed into the joint of his forefinger, letting out a sharp, satisfying crack. And then he finally lifted his head. He sat upright, rubbing a hand over his face. The effort it took him to wake up was a visible, almost painful thing to watch. My God, Gao Tiangyang couldn't help but ask, what did you do last night to be this wiped out? Just some trivial stuff. Jiang Tian clearly had no desire to elaborate. A deep displeasure was etched between his brows, warring with the lingering sleepiness. He fished a bottle of mineral water from his desk, the condensation beading on the plastic, dissolving under the heat of his fingertips. He twisted the cap off and took a long sip. Only then did his gaze finally drift, a slow peripheral glance that eventually settled on Xing Wang. He frowned, turning his head fully. Perhaps it was the iced water he'd just swallowed, because his voice, when it came, was laced with the same chill. Who are you? And why are you here? Listen to this bullshit. A flicker of cold amusement. Xing Wang already considered him guilty by association, but that tone of voice solidified it. A wave of his signature young master temperament washed over him. He tilted his chin, gesturing toward the new stack of books on his desk. I'm new, a challenging drawl, and I'm sitting here. You got a problem with that? The sight of 2 handsome guys facing off was an attractive one, and a few students in the front rows turned to watch the show. The second the atmosphere shifted, Gao Tiangyang rushed in to mediate. No, you were asleep, you don't know. The teacher told him to sit here. Which teacher? Jiang Tian demanded. Who else? Big Mouth. You know how he is, always assigning seats on a whim. Last time he moved my desk right next to the teacher's podium.
then forgot about it the next day and asked me why I wasn't sitting in a normal seat. I was so screwed. Sheng Wang, who had been locked in a cold standoff with Jiang Tian, shot a glare at Gao Tiangyang, his expression screaming a single capitalized reprimand. Why didn't you mention this when the monkey was here? A sudden jarring scrape of metal on linoleum sounded beside Sheng Wang. He turned to see Jiang Tian was already on his feet, chair in hand, dragging his single desk backward, putting distance between them. "What are you doing?" Gao Tiangyang asked, bewildered. "Changing seats." Jiang Tian didn't even look at him. He tilted his head in Sheng Wang's direction, his voice a low, dismissive murmur. "He's shorter. He can sit there. I'll take the back." Sheng Wang's eyes narrowed. "Who's short?" Jiang Tian was already settled in his new spot. He pulled a thick stack of test papers from his desk and tossed them on top, then leaned back in his chair, his gaze lifting to meet Sheng Wang's. "Or are you taller?" That's it. Sheng Wang felt a hard knot of dislike settle deep in his gut. There was no coming back from this. He shoved his own desk to the left, aligning it with the rest of the row, and stuffed his bag underneath. He had just sat down when Gao Tiangyang tapped his desk with a pen, leaning back to whisper, "Hey, bro." When young Master Sheng was displeased, his anger was a laser, focused only on the perpetrator. He wouldn't take it out on bystanders. Gao Tiangyang shielded his mouth with his hand, his voice dropping even lower, a conspiratorial whisper. "Don't take it to heart. He's not usually like this. Something must have happened the last couple of days. He's in a really bad mood." Sheng Wang offered a polite, "Oh," but his internal response was far colder. And how is that my goddamn business? He was far more concerned with the rest of the class than the ice-cold pestilence now sitting behind him. As far as he could see, he was the only one with fresh teaching materials on his desk. Everyone else had towering stacks of test papers. And despite the bell having rung ages ago, there wasn't a teacher in sight. What is wrong with this school? Before he could even ask, Gao Tiangyang, the human embodiment of a heartwarming jacket, spoke up again. "It's Saturday, supplementary class time, so it's self-study all day. You didn't bring any test papers. I literally just got here." "Oh, right. So what are you going to revise with?" He jabbed a finger at the pristine new books. "Textbooks?" "Revision," Sheng Wang repeated, the word sounding foreign and out of place on his tongue. "You said revision?" "Yeah." A cold premonition snakes its way up Sheng Wang's spine. He asked, his voice suddenly low and hollow, "Why would I need to revise?" "Because," Gao Tianyang said, with the grim satisfaction of a messenger delivering bad news, "we have a test tomorrow." Sheng Wang just stared. "What are we doing tomorrow?" "A test." Sheng Wang gave him a look that said, "What kind of fever dream are you having?" "A test on what? First year content? That was last semester's final exam." Gao Tianyang scoffed. "Why would they test us on year one?" He jabbed a finger at the pristine stack of books on Sheng Wang's desk. "They'll test these." Sheng Wang's mind went blank. "Say that again?" Perhaps the way his entire being froze was a little dorky, because Gao Tianyang burst out laughing. Sheng Wang pointed a trembling finger at the books, his voice now a perfect, chilling monotone. "Dean Su told me these were the new teaching materials for this semester." "Theoretically, yes, but we're already done with them. Today's August 8th, right? Our summer break started July 10th. We got 10 days off, then came back for supplementary classes. We just finished the last book 2 days ago." "What subjects? Math, physics, chem, all done?" "Language is a bit slower, and English never followed the textbook to begin with." Sheng Wang felt the air leave his lungs, a suffocating pressure building in his chest. "So I am expected to take a test tomorrow on 5 subjects I have never seen before in my life?" "Yep." The sparse lamps in the courtyard carved the world into sharp lines of light and shadow. Zheng Tian stood in one of those patches of darkness. He was tall, with the lean, nimble frame unique to youth, yet there was nothing lanky about him. He had a solid presence. His school bag was slung over one shoulder, his thumb hooked possessively around the black strap as he kept his gaze fixed on some distant, uninteresting point. It wasn't until Shang Minyan physically dragged his son forward that Zheng Tian finally turned to face them. The expression that crossed his face was that of someone who'd just been forced to swallow something rotten. Seeing the depth of the other boy's unhappiness, a wicked spark of invigoration shot through Shang Wang. "It's my fault. I've been a terrible elder," Shang Mingyang boomed, his voice overly cheerful. "I only just found out that Xiao Tian is also in year 2 at Fuzheng, and in the same class, no less." He kept his arm clamped over his son's shoulders, trying to nudge the rooted Shang Wang a step forward. "So, did you two already meet today?" As if torturing his own son wasn't enough, he looked expectantly at Zheng Tian as though he actually expected a polite reply. Zheng Tian obviously did not give him one. In the space of a single breath, his expression had already smoothed back into a mask of cool indifference. He looked at Shang Wang as if he were a complete stranger. "Xiao Tian?" A soft voice chided gently. Hearing that woman's voice, Shang Wang was pulled from his standoff. He remembered that there was a far more important person on this stage. Zheng O stood beside her son, dressed simply. She was nothing like the woman he had imagined. She was willowy, delicate even, yet she was still a good head shorter than her son. The contrast didn't just make her seem harmless, it gave her an air of gentle, unassuming warmth. She gave her son's elbow a slight tug. "Shou Tian, Uncle Shang asked you a question. You and Xiao Wang are classmates. You've met already, haven't you?" Zheng Tian turned his head, the space between his brows instantly creasing with raw, instinctive impatience. But he couldn't hold out against his mother's gaze. After a moment of tense rigidity, he turned back, tossing out a single, neutral line. "Was asleep all day. Didn't notice." "Bullshit," Sang Wang thought, a cold, silent accusation. "You absolute liar." If the conversation continued, the awkwardness would become suffocating. Shang Minyang, ever the mediator, jumped in at the perfect moment. He laughed. "First day, of course you can't remember every face. You'll get to know each other soon enough. We have plenty of time." Zheng Tian looked at him, his face a complete blank. The thumb hooked on his bag strap slipped free and he hitched the bag higher on his shoulder. His entire posture screamed that he was about to turn and walk away. And just as expected, he opened his mouth, his voice a low rumble. "I'll go accompany your mom for a meal, won't you?" Zheng O's gentle voice was laced with a quiet, cautious plea that was impossible to refuse. Zheng Tian froze. For a second, Shang Wang could have sworn he saw the very soul inside the boy's body struggle violently against its cage before slumping back down in sullen defeat. He was thoroughly enjoying the other boy's misery, but his enjoyment was short-lived. Having dealt with her son, Zheng O turned and smiled at him. It was the first time Shang Wang had gotten a proper head-on look at her, and in the instant she smiled, something in his chest tightened. He suddenly saw that her features held a faint, ghostly resemblance to his own mother's. Perhaps it was the soft, blurring effect of the lamplight, or perhaps it was the light dimple that appeared on her cheek when she smiled.
Or maybe it had just been too long. No matter how hard he tried to hold on to it, the image of her in his memory was fading, the colors bleeding out until she was no longer clear, until she was blurring into the face of a stranger. "Xiao Wang?" Jiang O's uncertain voice pulled him back. Sen Wang snapped out of his trance. Suddenly, he had no energy left for polite excuses. He muttered, his voice a low, breathless thing. "I have a stomachache. Dad, I'm going upstairs." "Hey, don't run away. What about dinner?" Sang Mingyang reached for him, but missed. "Didn't we talk about this? Can't you give your old man a little face?" Sen Wang was already a shadow moving through the doorway, his bag clutched in his hand. He tossed the words over his shoulder without looking back.
Your son has tests tomorrow on 5 subjects he's never learned. To hell with dinner. The hired lady handed him his slippers, and he shuffled upstairs, the sound heavy in the sudden silence. When he reached the corner of the landing, he couldn't stop himself. He found himself drawn to the window, taking one last glance down into the courtyard. They were still there. Sang Mingyang was speaking to Jang U, his posture apologetic, explaining away my young master timber, no doubt, telling her not to take it personally. Zhang Chan was still trapped by his mother's presence, unable to leave. He stood apathetically in the darkness, a solitary figure bathed in the cold blue light of his phone, his head lowered as he scrolled. He was barely on his phone for a moment when, as if he could feel the weight of a gaze upon him, he looked up. His eyes shot directly toward the window, locking on to Sen Wong. Sen Wong recoiled, pulling back from the window and quickly leaving the landing. He hung the do not knock sign on his door handle, the click of the lock echoing in his room. He stuffed his earpieces in and turned the volume up, so high that he wouldn't hear a thunderstorm, let alone a knock. Then he sat. The new textbooks were laid out in a neat, mocking row on his desk. He curled up in his chair, a pen spinning restlessly between his fingers. The phone he'd tossed to the side lit up, then lit up again. He let a few notifications accumulate before he finally reached out, his thumb swiping across the screen to unlock it. The messages were from his deskmate at his old school, a guy who wasn't great at studying, but was fiercely loyal, with a natural, heroic energy. Star Anise Crab, the science exam papers from the end of year 2's first semester? What do you want those for? Big boss, don't tell me you're already prepping for class the moment summer vacation started. Wait, that's not right. Why would you need old exam papers for revision? Big boss? Reply? Sungay? Fine. I know you won't even look at these messages if I don't send the pics first. Sen Wong's pen stilled. He jabbed at the screen with one hand. Canned. I just saw that. Star Anise Crab. Pretend. Go on and keep pretending. You're just lazy. You wait for the messages to pile up so you only have to reply once. See? You're doing it again. Fine. You're handsome. You can get away with anything. I got the exam questions for you. 1 copy each for math, physics, and chem, right? Why are you discriminating against language arts? Canned. You're the one discriminating. I don't have time for that many tonight. Have to learn to give and take. Star Anise Crab. What the heck? 1 night? What are you doing? And you're so lazy. You usually use voice messages. What's up with typing everything out today? Sen Wong's finger hovered over the screen. He let out a quiet tisk, finally giving up. He sent a voice message instead, his tone a dry, fatalistic drawl. It's because I arrived at this tragedy of a school today. They have a weekly test tomorrow on everything taught in the first semester of year 2. If I don't cram like my life depends on it, I'm getting zeros across the board. No time for language and English. That's up to fate now. Math, physics, and chem, those are still worthy of a deathbed struggle. Star Anise Crab replied with a series of confused emoji stickers, then sent the 3 papers over without another question, followed by a final baffled voice message. No, I still don't get it. Even if you do 1 paper for each subject, you'll barely score, right? It's not like they're going to test the exact same questions. Who said I'm doing the papers? Then what are you doing with them? I'm highlighting the key points according to their score weightage. Questions may vary, but the major pain points are always the same. I'll see what scores the most, cram that tonight, and hope for the best. It's a better cost-performance ratio. That actually works? I already told you. This is a deathbed struggle. And the rest? That's up to fate. Typing that last line, a sudden, sharp wave of heartache washed over the young master. To think that after 16 and a half years of navigating the world, the day had come where he had to rely on fate to pass an exam. He paused, then asked his friend, what was that answer-guessing mnemonic chant again? Hold on. I've got it written down. I'll send you a pic. My God, the day I get to see you use the answer-guessing chant has finally arrived. This calls for a universal celebration. At midnight, with With chemistry and physics finally settled, Shang Wang's eyes were a dry, aching burn. But the gnawing emptiness in his stomach was far worse. He was on the verge of starving to death. He paced his room twice, ransacked his 3 secret snack hoarding spots, and came up with nothing. With no other choice, he slipped his door open. As expected, a post-it note was stuck to the wood. There are washed red grapes in the fridge, and matsutake with shredded chicken porridge is being kept warm in the kitchen. Don't eat anything else at night. It's bad for your stomach. It was a ritual born of necessity. His father was rarely home, and the hired lady, knowing his irregular meals, would always leave something for him when he didn't answer her knock. It had become their unspoken convention. The house was shrouded in silence. His father would surely be asleep by now. Shang Wang didn't even bother with slippers, padding downstairs in his socks. Just as he opened the fridge, his head buried inside searching for the grapes, he heard his father's voice, a low, tender murmur from the balcony just beyond the glass doors. He froze for a moment. Then, clutching the bowl of grapes, he crept closer. Shang Minyang was on the phone. One hand held the device, the other pinched the bridge of his nose, his posture radiating exhaustion. And yet his tone was impossibly gentle. I've asked about the school dorms. He can only apply when the term officially starts. Xiaoten can't move over yet, even if he wants to. Yes, moving in here first is better. Actually, I'd be happier if you stayed for the long term. The morning after tomorrow, I'll bring Xiaochen over to help you move. You can tell Xiaoten that the courtyard is symmetrical. Both sides have their own private rooms. He can pretend we're just splitting the rent and we happen to share a kitchen. A sharp, choked gasp. The mouthful of grapes Shang Wang had just put in his mouth got stuck in his throat. The force of his silent choke sent a hot flush to the tips of his ears. He had known this was coming, but he hadn't expected to be so fast. So fast that it triggered a trifecta of nightmares that night. He dreamed of being chased by blank exam scripts. He dreamed of being chased by dogs, and he dreamed of being chased by Jiang Tian.